That is our own Michelle Ryder. Crime Pays. That's coming out soon to a music store near you, so check it out. I'm here in the studio tonight. I think there's a couple of things there that look kind of funky behind me there on my motorcycle. There's a couple of rags back there. I'm getting ready to go for a ride tomorrow. Yes, the summer is drawing nigh, and I must get out on my stallion for a ride. All right. Well, we're gonna talk about a whole bunch of stuff tonight. I'm gonna switch my audio over here because there we go. All right. Well, we got a great show for you tonight. We're gonna be talking about a whole bunch of stuff like AI, taxes. Oh, don't get me started. Taxes. Man, there's only three things in life that are certain, right? Or two things in life that are certain: taxes and death. We usually say that. We got a great show. We're going to talk about all these things: AI music. Why is it good, bad, and indifferent? The good, bad, and indifferent about streaming services and all that other stuff. And this latest tax thing, another tax grab. We're going to talk about that tonight as well. But before we do, I've got my co-host with the most from the East Coast. He always brings the best to this show, and I really appreciate him. His name is Sean McKenna from the podcast Barstools and Bandtalk, Rimshots with Sean. He does a whole bunch of other stuff. Here he is, Sean McKenna.
Howdy ho.
Hey, you. How's it going, man?
Good.
Uh,
Good.
what's the weather like out in Halifax?
You know what? We're starting to cool off here. Last 2 days they were saying it was 20 degrees. It didn't feel like 20 degrees. Some of the leaves are starting to change color and stuff. So we've had a good summer. I'm not going to complain. And we always get a little kick, usually, late September, early October, where it'll go back up again. So I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, humidity is gone. And hopefully, I think we're going to maybe have another surge of humidity in September, but it just won't be as oppressive as it was in July and August, I don't think.
Yeah, it's interesting too, right? You go through it and it's like, oh my God, this is terrible. And then it's gone. You kind of don't remember it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Momentary. I have a fall motorcycle trip planned. We're going up and doing Tobermory to Manitoulin Island, across to Parry Sound, then upwards to Huntsville and into Canada's Highlands.
Fun.
Yeah, so it should be a fun fall trip. The colors should be popping. We're heading out the 3rd of October, so we'll pray that the weather holds.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure
We're hoping.
it'll be dandy.
Last year was beautiful. We rode in shirt sleeves most days, and it was like 85, 90 degrees.
Yeah. No, I think there's going to be I don't know, we'll call it like a late season heat kick there.
Yep, I probably for sure. So tonight I want to talk about a few things. So I was reading on Facebook one day. It came across my feed, and his name is Bob Wagner. I'm hoping to get Bob on the show to talk about his Max Webster book, but also to talk about this. So this is dated August the 12th. He says, a couple of weeks ago, someone posted a new Queen song done by AI on YouTube. Did you see that?
I did, yeah.
What'd you think of it? 30 seconds.
Well, I can do it in 10. It's just
Okay.
another way for people who are not going to pay the dues to get into the business and ruin it. Boom. Did I get it in under 10? Because that's what it is to me.
There you go. Bob says, as a professional musician, I find this utterly terrifying because it's actually really good. You no longer need to be a musician to make music, just a teenager with a computer. Those decades of practice and dedication to craft seem all but pointless now. My friend and colleague Tristan puts it best. This is a liminal movement. I'm not sure what any of us are going to do for a living. We've just become redundant.
You know
Now,
here's when it's gonna start hitting people, when you can AI lawyers and AI accountants and AI politicians. Then people will stick their head up and go, ooh. Here's my thing. I don't find it terrifying because I'm to the point now with stuff as if that is what is acceptable to people to buy and purchase and stream, then great. That's not an audience I even care to pitch myself to.
I can think of a lot of guys who would probably use AI to order up the perfect wife.
Well, that's your wife, isn't it, Ken?
We could clone her.
There you go.
We could clone her, and the world would be a better place because of her. She's a much better human being than me.
Well, there you go. And it's I guess that there used to be this thing a number of years ago where the people that are in support of streaming would say, oh well, if artists didn't put out two great songs and the rest of the album be crappy, then you wouldn't have streaming and great, but it's one excuse after another. It's just people that are smart figuring out ways to have people do nothing
Right.
to
I mean,
basically get ahead.
Bob's post here is really good fodder for talking points on tonight's show because
Yep.
it really points to some of the problems inherent with this level of technology. All things are good, not all things are beneficial.
Very true. And I mean, now you're hearing, surprise, surprise, our prime minister says they want to convince provinces to use AI to do things. So what does that mean?
There's a government that wants to use AI to spy on us.
Well, I mean, they're already doing it.
I know.
Right? It's just, I don't, it's a real funny thing, right? Because you have people that, how do I describe this? I have a friend who I went to school with who, when I was in high school and I was sitting at the back of the cafeteria with my buddies Ian and Peter, who were in a band, he always used to make fun of us and say that we were skids and we were this and we were that, and never
Right.
played an instrument. Then he got a job
Yep.
where he fell into some money and he's been playing guitar 4 years. Now I see him posting all this stuff where he's playing. And I'm going, okay, well, why is it cool now? Dave, I don't understand why it's cool now. And
Because he's doing it.
well, but that's what AI does, right? It gives people who really haven't ever had any skin in the game the opportunity to think they have skin in the game.
I almost think that AI is being used in I don't know, a weird way to validate people, right?
Well,
I mean,
everybody gets a trophy generation, right? Like nobody has failure, and nobody falls down and gets to learn from their mistakes and their failures, and everybody.
if you can't self-validate, right? As human beings, we have to learn to be able to self-validate, not just take in what everything else says about us.
Yeah, but
Right?
the world ain't set up for that now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. And here's the thing, I don't really care about the naysayers. There's people that are naysayers about me, and that is just white. That's just white noise, man. To me,
Oh
it's just
yeah.
white noise because you know what? They're not out there doing what I'm trying to do.
Well, it's a good point, and
How can you judge somebody that's wearing a different set of shoes than you? And what gives you the right to do that?
well, we were having a discussion over dinner, and it's taken me a long time to kind of get to this place, but I often say, and I've said for a number of months, if you like a particular form of music, meaning you and I don't, it
Yeah.
doesn't make me right. It doesn't make you wrong, and vice versa.
No,
And
no.
you get into these topics with people where they think they're at the certain level of musicianship where they can go, well, this is if you're here, you're a good musician. But that's what you say. It doesn't mean there's no somebody sitting in the clouds going, you're right, you're wrong. And so people lose sight of the fact that all this stuff is your opinion. It's what makes you. It's what moves you. And so
It,
if somebody's coming after you for something, um, you're right. Who cares? Because you're doing your thing. It's not them, and they shouldn't
when
worry about it.
when somebody comes at me adamantly with only a singular point of view, right?
Yeah.
Because we all come at things with a singular point of view, our own point of view, for example, right?
Yep.
And we tend to, look at the world through that lens of that.
Yeah.
And so here's my favorite challenge to people when they're that dogmatic about something. I said, you have the right to be wrong.
Well, but how do you say it? It's almost as if you're wrong, it's dishonorable. If you make a mistake, it's dishonorable. And we're going down this whole psychological, conversation and mindset sort of piece here, right? But it gets down. So back to AI. I think it's kind of designed by people and for people that think they could always do it better, but never had the talent to do
Well,
so. So therefore, they get to now.
and I think the thing about creativity in music, and AI will never be able to copy this. That is the human emotion that goes into the making of that music. If the person is passionate about their music, you will feel it in their writing. You'll feel it in their performance of their music. And you catch that belief. I believe in my music. I
Yeah.
believe in what I'm doing. I believe that I'm making the world a better place by leaving my mark on it.
That's fair, but then you have to decide what success and failure. And unfortunately, some people, success and failure to them is what they think success and failure is. Most people look at what the world says success and failure is, and that's what they're always trying to attain. And that's the problem, right? Auto
Yeah, you gotta
tune.
stop. You gotta stop listening. And again, the whole idea of they say. Who
Well,
is
yeah.
they?
Well, we don't know who they is,
Right.
right?
Uh, so here's an interesting thing. So Bob goes on to say in this post, I'm trying really hard not to be the old man yelling at at the cloud, but but I fear that within a few decades we'll find ourselves in a world where very few people will be able to know what is music and what isn't. Hmm. I hope Rick Beato's kids who can tell the difference between real music and AI aren't a small minority. In the meantime, this kind of music is all over the internet now. I thought technology would have automated crappy, pointless jobs so that we could go and create and make the world a better place with it. But instead, we got the opposite. This was definitely not on my bingo card for the 21st century. That's
Yeah,
so well. That's so well written, man.
it is.
That's
But I
epic.
mean,
That's
look,
epic.
look at this. So I read this thing with Slash the other day where he was talking about amps, and he said most producers don't even know how to mix amps in the studio anymore, right? I was on a session where I did a drum track, and the producer was flipping out because I'm hearing snare in the kick drum mic, and I'm hearing kick in the snare mic, and
That
right,
dreaded microphone bleed.
which is what makes instruments, songs, everything sound great. Sounds, the sonics of it, and all that. The people talk organic. You don't get organic from an app. You get organic from, you know, the snare drum rattling off a wall and being picked up by the microphone.
See, here's the thing about microphone bleed, okay? Microphone bleed, if you don't have enough of it, it really sounds very compressed, right?
Uh,
It loses some level of dynamic range. So there's now people who believe that a certain amount of microphone bleed mimics that live performance. All your microphones on stage have live bleed, even the vocal mic.
oh, absolutely. I live that all the time. And here's the thing: a big part of a drum sound, particularly a kick drum sound,
Yeah.
is the snares rattling on the snare drum that get picked up when you hit the kick drum. That's a huge part. And I've watched people drive themselves bananas. The snares rattling when I hit it with the kick. It's supposed to. It's supposed to.
That's just part of the dynamic, man.
It's
That's
what
part of the
makes the kick. It's actually what gives the kick some of that top end. That I mean, take the strainer off and hit the kick drum.
yeah.
Right. I will guarantee you, it sounds like a floppy old cardboard box. Hit that snare and put it on, and you get that nice top end with the bottom. I mean, that's if you're tuning the drums properly. But these are all things that are getting taken out of the process because we're looking for the app, and we want Steve Gadd to play on our record, but we don't want to pay Steve Gadd, so we'll get the Steve Gadd in the app to do it.
I mean, I like Bob's point about this whole thing here. His belief that the internet and the strength that the internet brings would have would have automated crappy, pointless jobs so that we can actually become creative, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the idea that man was going to make machines like robots and all this other thing to do his work, so it would free him to be creative,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, but Bob's saying AI music has just done the opposite. If they'd
Yeah.
used if they'd used AI to help take away pointless, crappy jobs, right? And think more about, becoming a world that's more artistic in its thinking, because we're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time.
Well, but that's slowly people slowly trying to affect that, right? Because it's about money. It's about making the most amount of money and paying people little and what have you. And um, you know, again, you got to throw this at the feet of the buying public. If they deem it acceptable, what do you do with that? And
Well, and that
unfortunately,
and that kind of ties into, kind of what you just said there, ties into what we were going to talk about tonight with these taxes that are being placed on streaming services when we're already paying sales tax on those
yep,
services.
yep.
Like, what is that? Why are they doing that?
Well, I mean, to generate revenue,
Right.
right? I mean, we know what why is anything taxed? To generate revenue, right?
Yeah,
So
I'm yeah, I'm guessing so, but still, I actually I'm posting this because I think it's important for you all to see it. It's you can sign it if you want. It's a petition here that is going against the taxes that the federal government is placing on streaming services, because they think it's going to further hurt the financial gains of already struggling artists.
oh well, no question it will. Um, no question it will. Sasha, yeah, Hubert just had a great thing.
Yeah, he
Drummers bust their butts playing a great drum track, multiple takes, and they come back sounding like a drum machine. With some of those producers these days, it's sad to have to fight with them to make them sound like drums. And it's funny because I think of the days of Andy Johns, who recorded John Bonham, uh,
right,
uh,
right.
um, Bob Ezrin, Eddie Kramer, Martin Birch that did some of the Deep Purple albums and Iron Maiden. You go back and listen to those isolated tracks, and the best parts of them are the human element where people are messing up. It's what makes the song move. And
Well,
there's no
yeah,
soul in a lot of this music these days.
it's really funny. I had somebody here in the studio the other night. They were listening to a track that our band recorded last night, and he said, "Wow, the drums are really out high in the mix." And I said, "Yeah, I always listen to the drums way into the background. I like to hear the thunder of those drums, and I like to hear those doubles, those triplets, and paradiddles, and all that shit." Right? Those are the things that are the rhythm section that make up what we're doing. Right? I mean, my vocals, my guitar playing, our other guitarist, if it weren't for the bass player and the drummer, we'd have nothing, no foundation to work on.
Yeah, there's nothing more deflating than recording something that you're proud of and you hear the final mix. It's not so much when you go in and you're asked to do it for somebody and maybe you're compensated or whatever, but you know, that's what it's going to be. That's what they want. But when it's your own song that you've worked on and you hear it back and it's like that kick drum is buried or that snare is buried, there's nothing more deflating. And so Sasha's bang on. I've been in a couple situations like that where I've kind of been really excited to hear something and I hear it and I go like, what? Why? But
Yeah, it's really interesting because there are three instruments that are really important to me to have right at the vocal on our mixes, and that is the kick drum, the snare drum, and the bass guitar.
yeah, I'd argue you got to have some good hi hats in there at the proper
Oh,
level.
oh, oh yeah, always the hi-hats and the crashes and the ride for sure. But I'm just talking about in
Yeah.
terms of that ongoing. And you'll hear it in our mixes. And I put those all out on top. People go, "Well, why don't you bury the drums a little bit more?" I said, "The drums are the heart and soul of what we do."
It's funny, right? Because I don't know what it is this week. I've been having a lot of conversations with some of my friends about Steely Dan. Steely Dan had some of the best musicians that ever recorded Jeff Porcaro and Bernard Purdy and all kinds of different, and I'm forgetting people. But I've gone back and listened to some of their stuff, and I know what that drum pattern is because I can hear it, and it's
Yeah.
buried. It's buried.
Yep. Yep.
Um, even Paul Simon, some of Steve Gadd's, like, thank God when they recorded 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, they got it right, and you can hear everything. And but there's so many instances of that what they're playing is just bang on, and you don't hear it.
It's interesting because one of the things that we've really worked hard to do in terms of music development is the lead guitar player, listening to what the drummer's doing. And now there's things where Mike's playing shots and he's playing notes to those shots or staccatos on those shots.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes the song pop. And that's all led by the drummer. He's the guy orchestrating that whole thing.
So, I mean, what a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people don't know, but a lot of people don't realize there's all kinds of different drummers. And when I say that, I don't mean jazz drummers and country drummers and rock drummers.
Yeah.
There is drummers that, I would call them on the beat drummer. There's behind the beat drummers. I consider myself, and it's because of who I grew up listening to, I play off the vocals. So a lot of what I do is based upon the vocal line. And I've had people go, well, you could have done more there. Yeah, but the singer's not doing more there. Therefore, and so I'm kind of always trying to set the singer up. So oftentimes what I play doesn't lead to like super busyness, but what it does lead to is peppiness and boppiness, and I'm told my drumming sounds happy. It might not sound busy, and it might not be the most technical thing, but a lot of people don't realize there's all kinds of different players. And
I'm going to tell you something. You just mentioned that about giving the vocalist holes for the vocals. It's interesting because I don't set the cadence of how I sing the vocals on the songs until Mike has everything laid down the way that he wants on the drums, and I work the vocals around his drumming patterns because it always lends for a very, very interesting way of delivering those vocals.
And that's cool. How I would approach it, I might come up with a pattern, and then after I hear what you have done, I might totally change it.
Well, and you're right. That's what Mike does. Like he'll go, "Oh, I like what you're doing there. I'm going to change this here." And there's not always that back and forth, which I love. That you can't do that in AI, where you can put your minds together and work on creating something that's even better because you both have the same goal.
No, and for sure, and the thing with AI, and I guess you could go back and change it if you didn't like something. You could change anything, but I just, to me, it's just too precise and too lacks soul. It lacks heart. It lacks, I guess if you can take somebody that puts Bohemian Rhapsody together via AI or a song like that, and then can't go out and remotely ever hope to play it. Right on. Sell your million albums, buy a house, and get somebody on that can, right?
Dave Aricella says, I play bass off of Ian's guitar, probably because I come from a rhythm guitar background.
Is that how they spell Offa in Australia? That's good. I didn't know that. Love you, Dave.
Offa. Maybe that's a typo. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Offa.
Yeah.
That he might have got a little Australian slang in there. He could be.
Well, here in Nova Scotia, we tend to cut off our E's. So if we're saying running, we'll say running, or singing. So maybe
got a good point. Elizabeth Miller says the buying public is largely unaware of what is happening in the music industry today, and that soon we real music lovers will no longer be allowed to hear a great singer's natural voice.
You know what? That is an absolute amazing statement. I say this all the time. If you see an actress that's doing a part, and it's an American actress putting on an English accent, it must drive an English actress absolutely crazy that they got to get Gwyneth Paltrow from New York City to do a terrible English accent in order to make this part stand out, and stuff like. It's really the same thing, right? In I guess a different way. And she's right. she's right.
It, it's funny. My wife has this little strategic game that she plays on her phone in the evenings, and she usually has something on Netflix as some form of mindless entertainment while she's doing that, right?
Yep.
And usually when I'm out here doing the show, and then her and I watch a couple of shows together ourselves. But the interesting thing in all of that is the mindlessness of some of the shows that are out there, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And there's one out there. It's about selling real estate, and there's one woman in there. She has a British accent, but she really hams up the British accent. Like, I mean, it's like it's over the top.
All that stuff, like, Property Brothers. People will probably hate me for saying this, but when they have, Property Brothers celebrity give back, like, okay, so let me get this straight. I want to watch your show so that some celebrities, whoever those they might be, do a favor for somebody. Great, but who cares? Like, I don't get it. I'll give you another example. I'm going to sound like cranky old man tonight, but um, guy on the Edmonton Oilers just signed a $115 million contract, and for, I don't know, 20 minutes, I stupidly had the radio on today, and they were talking about all the things that could have happened if he didn't sign this contract. Guess what? He's not calling you to take you out to dinner, or he's not going to give you any of that money. Why are you so happy for him? I don't understand this. It just drives me nuts.
It is one of those things that just makes you go, right? When you think about it
Yeah.
all. Speaking of level of fairness and all those things, we've been seeing a great deal, and Brent's been pressing on this. I've been pressing on this, and there's several other people out there that are pressing on this whole thing about getting Helix inducted into Canada's music Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And it's interesting because there's a couple of people that have said publicly, "Oh, it's because of the backlog of inductees that they've got to bring into the hall the Hall of Fame."
Yeah, we
And
gotta get the guys that have sold 5 records out of the way first, and we'll get back to you,
well,
Brent and Brian. And
I'd hate to name names here, but there's pop bands that have made it into the Hall of Fame that didn't even have a gold album, or maybe had one gold album. Healing's got 4 gold albums and 2 platinums. So what?
I'm gonna say something that might cost me an interview, and I'm not gonna name names, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Um, so I was picked up for season 3 on Eastlink TV. Yes, kids, Friday nights at I'm not selling anything. However, so
I was be closing
uh,
ABC.
I decided to reach out to a manager of some people that I've been accused of not covering, and I sent a note. And I said, "Look, I've been picked up for season 3. If there's any of your folks that would want to come on, or they have something to promote, happy to do it." And I get a note back basically saying, "I'll get back to you in October, and I'll let you know." And I'm thinking, okay, and this is not to sound like an idiot. Leland Sklar answered his own email and scheduled his own interview with me, Paul Simon. Da, da, da. So why is it that Leland Sklar can do that, but some guy in my own backyard's manager will get back to me? And that's the problem, right? It's perception. It's what they think they're getting. It's, we're going to do AI because it's going to be way better than, Ken's band, because Ken's band is, it's dumb, and it's the way people think, and it just drives me nuts. Anyway, rant over. What can we talk about now? That's good.
No, I mean the whole question of AI. There's a whole lot to question about it, because and you think about the larger implications of this. There are people that commented on that Queen video,
Yep.
um, and said that, well, it really sounds like Freddie. It kind of sounds like Freddie's voice, but it sounds like they're straining to make it do something it's not supposed to do.
Well, I mean, it'd be one of those things where somebody, oddly enough, today sent me a message about Queen, and they said, did Roger Taylor always have crappy drum sounds? And it was like, you go back and you listen, and for the time, Roger Taylor was an amazing player, one of the best singing drummers ever, but didn't have great drum sounds. So maybe there's somebody out there that goes, I didn't like the way Freddie sang this. I'm going to do it the way I wanted Freddie Mercury to do it. And that's the
I
danger that you get into trying to rewrite history.
I like the videos that are shown on YouTube now. There's some video shorts on there. It says with auto tune, without auto tune,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right? I mean, auto tune is it a form of AI? Is even auto tune a form of AI?
absolutely. It absolutely is. Sure, it is.
And should it be used? Is it are we deceiving the public by not showing that human element in the vocals?
Well, so here's the thing, and I will say this, and call me out on it if you want. I did a song about a month or two ago. It was a great one take song, except I flunked up one tiny little thing. So
Got
instead of punching in, just one second, instead of punching in,
yep.
instead of going back and redoing the whole track, I just had my producer who the track was done. In that case, I can, you have the technology. But do you go, I mean, the song was probably, I don't know, 3.5 minutes. You do a 3.5 minute take again because one tiny little part. Um, yeah. Oh, so Elizabeth says, yes, I'm
I
deceiving
think we
us.
need
Well, guilty, Elizabeth.
I here's the interesting thing. I wonder, hey, uh, Elizabeth might be a good guest to have on the show. She's got some great points here. Ignorance really is bliss. Knowing that pitch correction auto tune is standard practice takes the joy right out of listening to music because now we don't even know what we're missing.
Well, I can tell you what you're missing on that particular track. You're missing an absolute, like, one hit that was probably, I don't know, a quarter of a note off that you would have been able to tell, and it would have upset the whole pattern. So, guilty.
But it didn't change the pattern because that one hit did not change you getting the rest of the track nailed.
So, but the stick. So
Okay.
when you being okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I didn't. I listen. I know what you're talking about. I'm just being. What happened was when I was doing it, I dropped the stick, and as a matter of fact, I took a video. Well, so people in the room took the video when I was playing it. You actually see when I do it because I put my head up. I dropped the stick. It bounced up. I grabbed it and I hit the drum with the back of my hand. So it was this deceiving sort of motion. Um, so yeah. Anyway,
Well,
but
I mean,
but let me say,
the
I like what Elizabeth is saying, right? Because it's like the subject of backing tracks. Do you use backing tracks to enhance, or do you put them on and everybody runs around not playing an instrument? You deceive people. I totally agree with that.
yeah, I mean, here's the whole thing about all of that is that if you were playing that song live, you would just had to stick with that performance. If it was recorded live, the only way you could change it if you went back and did an overdub.
You know how many times I dropped my sticks live? I think the last show was actually I had a new record. I dropped sticks a lot, as many as seven, and it's all part of the deal. It's part of live music. Um,
Well, and
again,
you've talked about that because I don't know, do you have a grip difficulty that you're dropping the sticks, or you have something going on
so
with your wrists, right?
well, I get carpal tunnel, so every now and again my hands will give me a hard time. That's actually it's a sweating problem. My hands get sweaty and they slip. But somebody near and dear to me
Aha!
found
You
this
got
thing
some new
called
sticks.
no. Well, I don't have them. Oh, maybe I do. Look at this. Did I mention Headhunter drumsticks? Go check them out. Dave and his team, but and they have grips on them. But Miss Ryder found something called Gig Grip, and it's a rubber piece that you put on. It basically goes over your finger, so when you're holding onto the stick, if it goes to fly out of your hand, it doesn't. And I've been trying it and working on it, and it's pretty cool.
By the way, Headhunter Drumsticks, if you're looking to sponsor a show, we'd love to be sponsored. We're always looking for sponsors, especially those that are in the music biz and who a lot of our artists buy their music and their music instruments and breakables, all those other things.
Listen, they're my sponsor, sir. Stop
Yeah,
trying to
I
scrape.
mean, I mean, we do when we record our stuff in the studio. We don't do any dubs. We don't do any overdubs. It's the best possible recording. That's all we do.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I can honestly say, I mean, I've done hundreds of recordings, and I can't tell you if there's one that I go, you know what, that man, I love it. But that's
Yeah.
really what it's all about anyway, right? Elizabeth brings up another thing, art, soul, the recordings, and I agree because to me, probably one of the recorded, mixed, anything albums is Back in Black by AC/DC. There's not a thing I would change on that album. Just from songs to how it's mixed to how it's engineered to sounds to you name it. It's just formidable.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. We decided to take more of a garage sort of, I guess, grunge approach to recording our music, and we just go for the best live performance. No dubs, no overdubs. We just get the best live performance we can, and that ends up being what we put out there. And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't.
That's the beauty of music, right? And the problem is that I think people um, are trying to get everybody to like their stuff, and that because that's the fairy tale world that they see when they see superstars.
Yeah,
Everybody loves this, everybody loves that.
it was funny. There was something on your feed the other day, and everybody was going, different points of view on this, but it was very much a very much two-sided idea about that post. And I ended up posting it. Well, I said the great thing about music is there's something for everybody.
Well, the funny one was the day before yesterday. Good friend of mine, Jeff McPherson, he finds these old commercials and stuff. So he had the Kiss dolls that came out in 1978. So I often get chastised for my very limited musical palette in terms of what I like and what I don't like. So I simply put, hey, you know, yes, Steely Dan is better, but they didn't have dolls, and I got ripped to shreds. Kiss sucks. It wasn't my point. My point was that these are my musical heroes, and I'm not saying I'm any better than anybody else. But this is what I grew up listening to, and to me, I like them better than that. Does it make me right? Does it make me wrong? Then you start getting it as, oh, well, you're stupid because these guys were way better musicians. Well, that's nobody said that. And anyway, it's so funny because that's where people go. It's you want to have a fun day of content on Facebook. I'll give you a little tip. Post your favorite album and say why it is your favorite album, and you watch what happens.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting what happens down the road with all of this AI stuff. All I can tell you is that it holds no interest for me. It's not going to stop me from wanting to make music and wanting to record it, produce it as naturally as I can and as organically as I can. Right?
Well, sure, and
Um,
I think it's also a way because one of the most unfortunate things to me, everybody gets older, right? Everybody, might lose skill set because, age or maybe they can't sing that way anymore. They got to adjust their playing. Even Neil Peart had to adjust the way he was playing, and he was still playing at a very high level. And I think this is a way, or the sell is going to be, hey, stay young forever with AI. You know what I mean? You can just continue to churn music out. Um, but at some point in time, man, you got to pass the baton. You got to pass the baton to the next group of people that are coming along, and that's the part
well,
about AI that scares me. Is the part that they're going to take the dues paying, they're going to take the want to learn something well, and just make it easy.
what's to say? They've already set it in motion. There's a certain band that already created their own avatars.
Yeah,
Now, wait a minute. I'm not going to say a name here. They created their own avatars, right? Who's to say that the next album that comes out by that said band isn't a fully AI album
I listen. In my opinion, said
with a
band is my
very
favorite band.
with a very younger voice, not the mature voice, but the very younger voice when they were at the peak of their career.
Sure. Well, I would almost guarantee you, and I'm on the record, and I've said this as my favorite band, that Avatar thing. And I don't mean to sound like my old man. But I don't. That's not the thing. I know what they're trying to do, but again, Gene is out doing his solo tour. He's never sounded better. He sounds great,
And he's
right?
playing a lot of the old Kiss standards. And why
Sure
why
is.
wouldn't he?
Well, and he sounds
Why
great.
wouldn't he? People are going to want to hear those old standards. I think his voice sounds better than it did in the younger days.
Well, he certainly has more control over it, and he knows what he can do with it. And I don't care what anybody says. Gene Simmons is a good bass player. Bass players will fight me to the death on that, but he has created some very musical parts that
Yep.
whatever. And
Interesting. He's an interesting. Does he play almost exclusively with a pick?
he's played with his fingers, but I think that he's a pick guy.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I bet he's a killer lead guitar player.
Well, and I mean, I was having a conversation with a friend the other night. He's like, I always know when a guitar player becomes a bass player because they play basic guitar, and that is a fair statement because true bass players, and I mean, some of my favorite guys that I've played with, like Ian Fancy and Side Hustle and Ryan Boudreau and Joe Breen and Mike Fugier and all these guys, they're true bass players and they play like bass players because they understand, it's just not about, there's things that you have to do to make a bass sing and fit in and sit well, right? So, and that's not the rip guitar players either. You always got to, make sure that nobody gets upset, but you can tell when that takes place.
Yeah, I just posted there. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. I posted in the chat there the change.org petition. You can go there and sign that to get Helix into Canada's Music Hall of Fame. There's actually a change.org petition out there now, and we're trying to get more signatures on that. So grab that link, share it out with your friends, and let's find another way of getting him in there. Dave says AI. This is Dave Aracali says, no AI from an administrative perspective, bring it. Saves so much time and effort, but leave music alone.
Yeah, they're not going to do that, unfortunately.
Leave them kids alone. There we go.
Music's always the first one to be experimented with and be cut. And yeah, I agree with you, Dave. They're not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, does it maybe mean that those in power really don't believe the value of music?
Totally.
So there's I did paste in there the Canadian Taxpayers Federation petition against the government, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's gone on there. I'm gonna flip to that as well. So the music streaming service has come out swinging against Canada's new discriminatory tax. They call it a discriminatory tax that requires them to hand over 5% of their Canadian revenues. Now, this is supposed to be so that Canada can promote cultural whatever. Right?
They do that here in Halifax. So in Halifax, they have a hotel room tax. So anybody that comes to Halifax, they pay, I don't know, maybe it's $10, I'm guessing. And then that money goes into a pot that the city uses to put on events. But guess who gets to play them? People that are part of Music Nova Scotia or people that are part of groups. And so
it's very discriminatory. You're telling me this is a discriminatory practice then?
No, it's not a discriminatory practice. It goes into a pot that's distributed by a group of people that think they know what's best for everybody, but it's that's what happens.
Right. So they're being discriminatory. They're discriminating against other people outside that fold.
I think they're picking winners and losers. I don't know if they're sitting there going, okay, we're not going to have Sean because he's Irish Catholic, but we're going to have Ken because he. I don't think it's anything like that. I think there's a certain box that certain things have been set up to do, and that's the scope, right, of what it's.
Okay. I get that, but what if it is something different than that?
Such as?
Well, I mean, the whole thing about this tax thing is to grab more tax on top of tax. People are already paying tax for streaming services. Now it becomes why isn't this just another tax grab?
Well, no, because the way that it will be pitched and the way that it is being pitched is that it's not fair because they're streaming and people are being disadvantaged. So we're going to swoop in and put a tax on it to save the day. But where does that money go?
Yeah, but they're saying, okay, so the Canadian government's approach to all of this is that it's to increase they're trying to make it a source of revenue for the growth of music in Canada. Right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it is a discriminatory tax on streaming services that are already making significant contributions to Canadian artists and culture. Graham Davies, and president of CEO of Digital Media, DEMA, he said that in a statement way back in June. He said that streaming is the main source of revenue and engine of growth for music in Canada. It benefits the industry, creators, fans, and consumers, and is already effectively a protectionist subsidy for radio. So I don't know how the CRTC can sell this as, oh, we're going to do this to create a better culture of music in Canada.
But they don't have to sell it. What they need to do is get it passed on the floor, have Senate rubber stamp it, and then it's a thing. That's
Well, I mean, CTV News ran an article on why Helix should be in Canada's Music Hall of Fame, right?
Yep.
You can't even post the link to that video, even though it's a Canadian news outlet. You
Yep.
can't post that link to that video on Facebook. It won't let you post it.
Well, so I don't want to go down this rat hole too hard, but there's a piece of video. Go find it. I don't know where it was, but it was Tuesday, and our prime minister was doing something in a rally. It was like, again, go look for it. I don't know what it was, but there was this one gentleman who was asking
The
questions.
donut. That was the donut.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so here's the thing. He was making points, and what was our prime minister doing? He was reciting off here's your cheat sheet for the day. We've done this, and we've put 40 million, and the guy was just doubling down. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to. You're going to bring it up. We're going to bring it up and bring it up and bring it up and bring it up, and they're going to not listen. They're going to pretend like they're listening, and then we're going to get the tax. Is what's going to happen.
Right. Here's the interesting thing that I like, and I think now there is declarations now that you must make when you are publishing music, Elizabeth. So this might answer your question, because Elizabeth says here, forget the tax, just start labeling music, whether recordings or live performances, that is not real and has been pitch changed or AI or otherwise. It's just false advertising. No. So to that point, you right now have to sign a disclaimer saying that you've used AI in your music that you're publishing. If you've applied for the correct licensing and you're using resampling, you have to sign that disclaimer when you're publishing your music. So that already comes out with that music, and you got to remember that Spotify, iTunes, all the major streaming services like iTunes and Deezer. Another one that's getting big is Amazon. And they all have the same approach. So they base your listening suggestions algorithm based on what you listen to. Right? So they use AI in a way to help you find more of the music that you've shown an interest in.
Yeah, well, they're doing a great job because they always suggest sucky songs on my playlist.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's AI. It has to continually learn, right? They're using AI to do it, right?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair.
But they're using AI to study your habits, your listening habits. Now, if you first go to a streaming service, the cool thing about streaming services and the downside of it is, back in the day, you had a lot more skin in the game, right? You had to go and buy a physical album, right?
Yep.
You couldn't spend that same $10.99 and in the same day listen to 20 major artists, right? A streaming service gives you that ability. You can listen to Led Zeppelin, you can listen to Pink Floyd, you can listen to all your favorite bands from back in the day, and you can do that within the span of an hour, right? A track from each of those of your favorite artists, and you can put that into a mix, and you can listen to it on a playlist. That is one advantage of the streaming services that offers them variety. The problem is, there's that whole paradox. You ever heard of a guy named Barry Schwartz?
Yep.
So he does a thing on TED TV, which was called The Paradox of Choice. And I'll give you the real Cole's Notes version on that, is that with too much choice, people become paralyzed.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and don't we live in a world that's got too much choice?
Big message there, Ken. Big message there.
You know, there is a lot of things thrown at people in terms of music. We got, 60 to 70,000 new tracks being published every single day.
Yep.
And because there's no gatekeeper on Spotify, no gatekeeper on iTunes, no gatekeeper in any of these digital downloads and streaming services, half that could be absolute crap or more.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the thing is, again, it's that whole idea of everybody gets a trophy mentality in terms of publishing music.
Yeah.
Right? There's no gold standard set anymore in terms of things that are maybe adding value to the listener, right? Right? The quality of the lyrics, the quality of the performance, the quality of the recording. I mean, there's different things that could be used as measurables or maybe even hard skills that artists must be able to bring to a streaming service before they're allowed to publish publicly.
So, but who sets those?
Well, I don't know. I don't know, but there's no gatekeeping, right? And there's no way to filter out that stuff, right? And it's the same as guys I know in radio. They get submissions of stuff that's just absolute garbage. I mean, it's recorded on somebody's phone.
But
Right?
here's the thing. I would argue a lot of stuff that came out of my neck of the woods in the 90s sounded just like that, and it became major hits. So if no, and this is my point. How do you gatekeep who is qualified? And it
Well,
always gets back to this answer of there's certain people that think other people are more qualified because they have education or they studied or they have this or they have that. What that's this is the part, and maybe this is where AI comes in, but then you would have to have a model of what was good for AI to decipher through. I don't know, man. It's just such a big it's a big huge question mark for me.
yeah, I think some guys in radio are setting some of their own standards on what they'll accept and what they won't accept because
That's fair.
they're looking at how much work did the artist actually put into producing this?
Well,
How much blood, sweat, and tears, because there's a whole thing of skin in the game. It's not just about money. It's about putting your heart and soul into your music, right?
I don't know. I mean, Elizabeth has a point. Maybe one thing of gatekeeping would be saying it was pitch changed or autocorrected. That's not a bad idea. Um, I could get on board with that. The problem is that for me, and this is a Sean problem. Let's just get that straight. I'm not saying that it's anything, but and the Helix thing is a grading elected into whatever by a jury or their peers. Well, what does that mean? Because I would wager to say that probably a jury of Brett Turner's peers isn't on that jury. Hasn't had his experience, hasn't written the amount of songs that he's had, yet that's a jury of his peers. So these are the things for me that I go, guess what? I've got an issue with how you guys are doing this. And then it becomes, what's the gatekeeper thing? So Elizabeth, good point. Maybe it's something like that. If you're putting AI or auto tune or fake music out there, no problem. You're in, but because of
Being,
this or that.
being able to put filters on it would maybe streamline it for most folks because then they get down to what they like most. One of the reasons why we switched to releasing songs single by single was we're getting a lot more attention on singles than we're getting on album releases.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd find that maybe one or two tracks on an album would get attention. But when we waterfall releases now, we seem to get a whole lot more attention on singles. And it gives us a lot more opportunity to work those singles.
Well, I was going to say it's a lot easier to promote. There's no question.
Yeah, it is. And you're not trying to promote a whole album, you're trying to promote a singular track.
Yep.
And there's bits and pieces of that singular track that you're trying to sell, in terms of people going, yeah, I want to subscribe to this person so that I get a notification every time they release music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going to follow them. I'm not going to follow them on a streaming service. I'm going to follow them on social media. And every time I see a post about a new release by that artist, then I'll go and I'll track it down,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I mean, there's a whole lot of different ways, and what I really love about seeing, I talk about this in terms of analytics all the time. One of the things that I like seeing is all the different places that people come from that visit my website.
Oh, it's very cool. Very cool. Well, something that I love to do,
Yeah, and
and it gives me fits, but it gives me joy at the YouTube studio, and I break down my audience in the analytics section, and you get to see, like so last week, I love this, man. I was last week 45 to 54 and 55 to 64 exclusively. You can't really see this, but I'm all over the map now because I made a conscious effort to change that. I'm 61% male, 38.2% female in my audience. And last week it was almost 94. 94. Okay.
right.
I'm going to this week that I do in the United States, or is that? I don't know. I think I know because I had an artist on there that is a big kind of indie artist. So, but this is
Right.
all cool stuff, right?
Well, it's an interesting phenomenon. We're going to see how this all pans out, but here's one of the things. An artist that's going to be coming on our label right now. Their audience is predominantly female. They're an all male band, but their audience is predominantly female, and they're really making an impact, which is really interesting. But the old saying, you bring the chicks, you bring the
That's not always true, my friend. Trust me.
well, I'm telling you, I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen, and it's interesting. If girls come out to the show, the guys come out there to the show. I mean, because the show is usually in a venue that's a social venue.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest with you. Made no bones about the fact that I was always playing towards the female audience, and I mean, I joke around with friends about that all the time. My good buddy Warren Roberts, I'd always ask Warren, "Hey, how many girls were at your show last night?" Knowing I was only joking around because Warren's an awesome,
Right.
absolutely incredible player. Um, uh, but that's not always the case, man. I've been there so many times.
Yeah,
But it's good if it is.
I don't think it's always the case, but it good if it is, because it promotes a much more social environment. It's really funny because you listen to prog rock bands saying, I'm looking out in the first 20 rows and all I see is guys.
Well, did you see the? It was from the movie I Love You, Man, and they were at a Rush concert and they broke into the dressing room, and the first thing is Neil Peart's like, "Oh my God, there was like 7 women in the front row tonight."
Oh my God, we digressed a bit tonight, but I mean,
Well,
I
no,
don't. I
hey, one last thing.
Yeah,
One last thing.
sure, sure.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, this is a good point that comes up a lot when we do merch, because it's knucklehead guys that usually think about the t-shirts. Can we talk about why there are no sexy band tees for lady fans? That's Elizabeth, and she was. We get Ken. We got to come up. We got to come up with some sort of award or something for engaged audience participant. That's a great point because you don't know how many times we do t-shirts and the ladies will always ask, "Are they V cut? Are they this?" Or because we don't think about it. Thank you, Elizabeth. That's a very
we
good point.
we should we should do the indie show T-shirts and sell
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
them. It might be kind of fun.
Always
Maybe we can talk to some of the ladies and help us come up with a design.
2 words: pre-order.
Pre-order.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, it's been great chatting with you tonight. Next week, it's going to be you and me next week, and next week is 9/11, so we'll be having a moment of silence for those that fell during 9/11. So anyone across the world that's lost a loved one in some sort of tragedy on 9/11, we're going to take a minute of next week's show and honor those people. And we're going to be probably going to continue this conversation because there's so much more we can scratch. We're just scratching the surface every week here. And I want to thank you, Sean, for joining me tonight. Always a
My
pleasure.
pleasure. And I'd just like to say one quick thing because you mentioned 9/11.
Yep.
This week we had I believe it was the 26th anniversary of the Swiss Air crash. I was living in Toronto when it happened, but it's something that impacted this province greatly. I had a lot of friends that actually worked on rescue, recovery, identification, and a lot of folks to this day still have a lot of PTSD and whatnot associated with that. If you come to Nova Scotia, there are two monuments that are dedicated to the people that lost their lives that day, and both of them are extremely beautiful. And it's something that is a huge part of this province, and I wanted to make sure that I gave a shout out about that.
Yeah, I think we'll try and find some posts next week too. If if there's ways that you can give to support work in helping people with PTSD, survivors of tragedies. We've had certainly a number of those in Canada as well as other places around the globe. So maybe that's something that we should be thinking about. Maybe as we do the 9/11 show.
I agree because if you know anybody that has it, the struggle is one thing, but how quickly it gets swept under the carpet and how hard it is for them to get help for that is utterly ridiculous. So I think that's a very good thing we could do.
The struggle is real.
No question.
Yeah, well, listen, brother, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me this week. Remember, this is the Indie Show. Happy the rest of your week from Hump Day forward. I am Kenny. You are not.